The Gathering Storm. In a distant corner of the galaxy, the Galactic Alliance convened an emergency meeting. Representatives from various alien races, each known for their unique strengths and abilities, gathered to address the growing threat of the Crimson Corsairs, a notorious band of pirates that had been terrorizing the star systems for months. "The Crimson Corsairs have grown too bold," declared Zarthax, the Eclaran commander. His scales shimmered under the council room's lights as he slammed his fist on the table. "They have raided our trade routes, plundered our resources, and now they have the audacity to establish a stronghold in the Chiron Nebula." Murmurs of agreement echoed through the room. The Crimson Corsairs had indeed become a thorn in the side of the Galactic Alliance. Their advanced technology and ruthless tactics had allowed them to evade capture and strike fear into the hearts of civilians across the galaxy. "We must act swiftly," Zarthax continued. "I propose we assemble a team of our finest warriors and launch a coordinated attack on their stronghold. We will catch them off guard and put an end to their reign of terror once and for all." As the council deliberated the plan, a figure cleared its throat at the far end of the table. Eyes turned to the human ambassador, a tall, slender man with piercing blue eyes. "The Human Alliance agrees that action must be taken," he said calmly. "We are prepared to contribute our forces to this mission. However, we have one condition." The room fell silent, anticipation hanging in the air. The human ambassador took a deep breath before continuing. "We will send our most elite warriors, but they will be accompanied by a special representative from our world, a symbol of our commitment to peace and the future of the galaxy." Confusion rippled through the council. What could the humans possibly mean by a special representative? Zarthax leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "Ambassador, with all due respect, this is a mission of utmost importance. We cannot afford any liabilities or distractions." The human ambassador smiled enigmatically. "I assure you, Commander Zarthax, our representative will be an asset, not a liability. Trust in the wisdom of humanity." The council exchanged skeptical glances, but ultimately agreed to the humans' condition. They had little choice. The humans were known for their advanced technology and formidable military prowess. If they wanted to succeed in their mission, they needed the support of the Human Alliance. As the meeting adjourned, the alien warriors couldn't shake the feeling of unease that settled over them. What did the humans have in store? What could this special representative possibly bring to the table in a battle against the most notorious pirates in the galaxy? Only time would tell, but one thing was certain. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine the fate of the galaxy. The Crimson Corsairs had no idea what was coming their way, and the Galactic Alliance warriors were about to embark on a mission that would challenge everything they thought they knew about warfare and the nature of their allies. An unexpected arrival. The day of the raid arrived, and the Galactic Alliance warriors gathered at the designated rendezvous point, a remote space station on the edge of the Chiron Nebula. Zarthax stood tall, his battle-scarred armor glinting under the harsh lighting of the hangar bay. Around him, warriors from various races checked their weapons and steeled themselves for the impending battle. The Eclarans, known for their strength and ferocity, sharpened their plasma claws and practiced their battle stances. The lithe and agile Zephyrians calibrated their energy bows, their iridescent wings twitching with anticipation. The hulking Crotharians lumbered through the hangar, their heavy mechanized suits whirring and clanking with each step. As the warriors prepared for battle, a sleek human ship entered the hangar and docked alongside the Galactic Alliance vessels. The warriors paused, curious to see the elite human forces that would be joining them on this crucial mission. The airlock hissed open, and a small group of humans emerged. They were clad in advanced combat suits, their faces obscured by tinted visors. But what caught everyone's attention was the small figure walking hand in hand with one of the human soldiers. It was a child. A wave of disbelief and confusion swept through the hangar. The alien warriors stared at the tiny human, who couldn't have been more than 6 Earth years old. The child, a girl with bright green eyes and a mop of curly brown hair, looked around the hangar with wide-eyed wonder, seemingly oblivious to the gravity of the situation. Zarthak strode forward, his eyes narrowed. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, his voice echoing through the hangar. "We are about to embark on a dangerous raid against the most notorious pirates in the galaxy, and you bring a child." The lead human soldier, a tall man with a grizzled beard, stepped forward. "This is Leela," he said calmly. "She is our special representative." "A child?" Zarthak scoffed. "What could a child possibly contribute to this mission? This is no place for one so young and innocent." The human soldier smiled enigmatically. "Leela's presence here is a symbol of our commitment to peace and the future of the galaxy. She reminds us of what we're fighting for, the innocence and potential of the next generation." The alien warriors exchanged skeptical glances. They had heard of the humans' strange customs and beliefs, but this was beyond anything they had encountered before. To bring a child into the heart of a battle against bloodthirsty pirates, it was unthinkable. But the humans stood their ground, and Leela seemed unperturbed by the tension in the room. She looked up at Zarthax with a smile, her green eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Are you a real alien?" she asked, her voice filled with innocent wonder. Despite himself, Zarthax felt a flicker of amusement. The child's innocence was disarming, and he found himself at a loss for words. He glanced at the other warriors, seeing similar expressions of bewilderment and reluctant endearment on their faces. "Very well," Zarthax said finally, his voice gruff. "But the child stays on the ship during the raid. We cannot risk her safety." The human soldier nodded, his expression unreadable behind his visor. "Of course, Commander. Layla will remain under our protection at all times." With that, the warriors returned to their preparations, the tension in the room somewhat diffused by Layla's presence. But as they loaded their weapons and reviewed their battle plans, they couldn't shake the feeling that this mission would be unlike any they had ever experienced before. The cuteness had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. Into the fray, the Galactic Alliance fleet emerged from hyperspace on the outskirts of the Gyron Nebula, the swirling clouds of gas and dust obscuring their approach. On the bridge of the flagship, Zarthax stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes fixed on the viewscreen. Beside him, the human soldier who had introduced Leela earlier, Captain Marcus, studied the tactical readouts on a holographic display. "The Crimson Corsair stronghold is located in the heart of the nebula," Marcus said, pointing to a pulsing red dot on the display. "Our scans indicate heavy fortifications and a significant number of pirate vessels in defensive positions." Zarthax nodded grimly. "As expected, they'll be ready for us." He turned to face the bridge crew, his voice ringing out with authority. "All ships proceed with caution. Stay in formation and prepare to engage on my command." As the fleet advanced into the nebula, the alien warriors on board the various ships checked their weapons and steeled themselves for battle. In the hangar bay of the flagship, Leela sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by a group of human soldiers who had been tasked with her protection. The child seemed oblivious to the tension that permeated the ship, her attention focused on a small, fluffy toy creature she clutched in her arms. She hummed a cheerful tune, her voice a stark contrast to the grim determination etched on the faces of the warriors around her. Suddenly, the ship shuddered as the first volley of enemy fire impacted the shields. Alarms blared and the lights flickered, but Leela remained calm, her eyes wide with curiosity rather than fear. On the bridge, Zarthax barked orders as the fleet returned fire, the nebula lighting up with the flashes of energy weapons and the explosions of damaged ships. The Crimson Corsairs had indeed been ready for them, their vessels swarming out from hidden bases within the nebula's depths. The battle raged on, the Galactic Alliance fleet taking heavy losses as they pushed deeper into the nebula. The Crotharian mechanized suits proved invaluable, their heavy armor absorbing the brunt of the enemy fire, while their powerful weapons tore through the pirate ships with ease. But even with their advanced technology and skilled warriors, the Galactic Alliance found themselves outmatched. the Crimson Corsairs fought with a ferocity born of desperation, their tactics ruthless and unpredictable. In the midst of the chaos, a Zephyrian scout ship took a critical hit, its engines exploding in a brilliant flash of light. The ship spiraled out of control, careening toward the flagship's hangar bay. "Brace for impact," Zarthak shouted, gripping the edge of the command console as the ship shuddered violently. In the hangar, the human soldiers threw themselves over Leela, shielding her from the debris that rained down around them as the scout ship crashed through the bay doors and skidded across the deck in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. For a moment, there was silence on the bridge, the only sound the hiss of static from damaged consoles and the distant wail of emergency sirens. Then, a small voice crackled over the comms. "Is everyone okay?" It was Leela, her voice trembling slightly but filled with genuine concern. Zarthak stared at the comm speaker, his expression unreadable. In that moment, he realized that the battle was not going in their favor. The Crimson Corsairs were proving to be a far greater challenge than they had anticipated, and the cost in lives and ships was mounting rapidly. He glanced at Marcus, seeing the same realization in the human's eyes. They needed a new plan, a new approach, and they needed it fast. But before either of them could speak, a shout came from the tactical station. "Commander, incoming transmission from the pirate stronghold." Zarthak swirled around, his eyes wide. On screen, the view screen flickered, and the sneering face of a Crimson Corsair filled the display. "Surrender now," the pirate growled, his voice dripping with malice, "and we may spare your lives. Continue this futile assault, and you will all perish." Zarthak's eyes narrowed, his fingers tightening on the hilt of his plasma sword. The battle hung in the balance, and the fate of the galaxy rested on the choices they made in the next few moments. But unbeknownst to the warriors on both sides, a small child with a heart full of innocence and wonder was about to change the course of history in ways no one could have ever imagined. Innocence on the battlefield. Amidst the smoke and chaos of the hangar bay, Leela emerged from the protective embrace of the human soldiers. Her eyes wide with concern, she looked around at the twisted metal and sparking debris that littered the deck. "We have to help them," she cried, pointing to the wreckage of the Zephyrian scout ship. The soldiers exchanged uncertain glances, their training warring with their instinct to protect the child. But before they could stop her, Leela darted forward, her small form disappearing into the haze of smoke. "Leela!" "No!" Marcus shouted, leaping to his feet and charging after her. On the bridge, Zarthak watched in horror as the events unfolded on the security feeds. "Get that child out of there," he roared, his voice tinged with a mix of anger and fear. But it was too late. Leela had reached the wreckage of the scout ship, her small hands tugging at the twisted metal in a desperate attempt to free the trapped Zephyrian pilot. Suddenly, a deafening blast rocked the hangar as a pirate boarding craft breached the bay doors. Crimson Corsairs poured out of the craft, their weapons blazing as they charged towards the Galactic Alliance warriors. In that moment, time seemed to slow down. The pirates' eyes fell upon Leela, their expressions shifting from bloodthirsty rage to confusion and hesitation. The sight of a small human child, her face streaked with tears and her hands cut and bleeding from her efforts to help the trapped pilot, was not something they had expected to encounter on the battlefield. Marcus and the other soldiers rushed forward, forming a protective circle around Leela and the wrecked scout ship. They braced themselves for the pirates' onslaught, their weapons raised and ready. But the attack never came. The Crimson Corsairs, their weapons still trained on the soldiers, hesitated. Their eyes darted between Leela and the grim-faced warriors who stood ready to defend her. "Hold your fire," a gruff voice commanded. The pirates parted, revealing a tall, scarred figure in a red battle suit. It was the Crimson Corsair captain himself, his eyes fixed on Leela with an expression of disbelief and confusion. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice echoing through the hangar. "A trick? A trap?" Marcus stepped forward, his weapon lowered but still ready. "No trick," he said calmly. "This is Leela, a child from our world. She represents the innocence and hope that we fight to protect." The pirate captain stared at Leela, who met his gaze with tearful, pleading eyes. "Please," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Don't hurt anyone else. We just want to help." For a long moment, the hangar was silent, the only sound the distant rumble of the ongoing battle outside. The pirates shifted uneasily, their weapons lowering slightly as they looked to their captain for guidance. The captain's face was unreadable, his eyes locked on Leela. Then, slowly, he lowered his weapon. "Stand down," he ordered, his voice gruff but lacking its earlier malice. The pirates hesitated, surprise and confusion evident on their faces. But one by one, they lowered their weapons, the tension in the hangar easing slightly. On the bridge, Zarthax watched the scene unfold with a mix of relief and astonishment. He had never seen anything like it, a child's innocence and compassion breaking through the fog of war and hatred. "Open a channel to the pirate captain," he ordered, his voice calm but filled with a newfound respect. As the view screen flickered to life, revealing the scared face of the Crimson Corsair captain, Zarthax took a deep breath. "Captain," he said, his voice steady, "it seems we have much to discuss." The captain's eyes narrowed, but there was a glimmer of something else in his expression, a hint of weariness, perhaps even a touch of hope. "Indeed we do, Commander," he replied, his voice low. "Perhaps it is time for a change." And with those words, the course of the galaxy shifted once more. The battle that had seemed so certain, so inevitable, had taken an unexpected turn, all because of the innocent compassion of a small human child. A glimmer of hope. In the hangar bay, Leela sat on a crate, her small legs dangling over the edge as a Zephyrian medic tended to her cuts and bruises. Around her, the Galactic Alliance warriors and the Crimson Corsairs stood in uneasy silence, their weapons lowered but their eyes still wary. Marcus knelt beside Leela, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. "You were very brave," he said softly, his voice filled with a mix of pride and concern. Leela looked up at him, her green eyes wide and bright despite the tears that still clung to her lashes. "I just wanted to help," she said simply, her voice small but filled with a quiet strength. Across the hangar, the pirate captain watched the exchange with an unreadable expression. His eyes flickered to the view screen on the wall, where Zarthax's face loomed large. "The fighting has stopped," the Aclaran commander said, his voice grave. "Both our forces and yours have ceased fire. It seems your actions, Captain, have given us a chance for dialogue." The pirate captain nodded slowly, his scared face betraying a hint of weariness. "I never thought I'd see the day when a child's innocence would bring a battle to a standstill," he said, his voice rough but tinged with a newfound respect. "But here we are." Zarthax leaned forward, his eyes intent. "The question is, where do we go from here? The Galactic Alliance cannot simply forget the crimes of the Crimson Corsairs. But perhaps if you are willing, we can find a path forward that does not lead to more bloodshed." The captain was silent for a long moment, his gaze distant. Then, slowly he nodded. "I'm listening." As the two leaders began to talk, their words transmitted to the ships of both fleets. A hush fell over the hangar. The warriors on both sides looked to Leela, their expressions a mix of awe and disbelief. The child had done what no weapon, no strategy, no show of force had been able to accomplish. She had opened the door to peace, to the possibility of a future where the Galactic Alliance and the Crimson Corsairs were not sworn enemies, but perhaps even allies. It would not be an easy path. Trust would have to be earned, old wounds healed, and new bonds forged. But for the first time in a long, bloody history, there was a glimmer of hope. As the medic finished tending to Layla's wounds, Marcus helped her down from the crate. The child looked around the hangar, her eyes settling on the pirate captain. With a determined step, she walked towards him, the eyes of every warrior in the hangar following her. The captain looked down at Leela, his expression guarded, but the child merely smiled up at him, her hand outstretched. "I'm Leela," she said, her voice clear and bright. "What's your name?" For a moment, the captain stared at the child's hand as if it were a foreign object. Then, slowly, he reached out and took it in his own, his massive, battle-scarred hand engulfing her tiny one. "Draken," he said, his voice gruff but not unkind. "My name is Draken." Leela's smile widened. "It's nice to meet you, Draken," she said, her voice filled with the simple, honest joy of a child making a new friend. And with that simple gesture, a handshake between a battle-hardened pirate and a small human child, the course of the galaxy changed once more. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but for the first time in generations, there was a chance for true peace. As Leela stood there, her hand clasped in Draken's, the warriors of the Galactic Alliance and the Crimson Corsairs looked on with a newfound sense of purpose. They had fought for so long, lost so much, but now, thanks to the innocence and compassion of a child, they had a chance to build something new, something better. The strength of compassion. In the weeks that followed the fateful encounter in the Gyron Nebula, the galaxy watched in awe as the Galactic Alliance and the Crimson Corsairs began the long, difficult process of forging peace. It was not an easy road. Generations of mistrust and hatred could not be erased overnight, and there were many on both sides who resisted the idea of laying down their arms and working together. But Leela's example, her unwavering compassion, and her ability to see the good in everyone, even those who had once been her enemies, inspired others to follow in her footsteps. Draken, the once feared pirate captain, became one of the most vocal advocates for peace. He worked tirelessly alongside Zarthax and the other leaders of the Galactic Alliance, using his influence and his knowledge of the criminal underworld to help dismantle the pirate networks that had plagued the galaxy for so long. It was a long, arduous process, but slowly, piece by piece, the galaxy began to change. Trade routes reopened, long-abandoned colonies were rebuilt, and the people of the galaxy began to look to the future with hope instead of fear. And through it all, Leela was there, a constant reminder of the power of innocence and the strength of compassion. She became a symbol of the new era, a beacon of light in a galaxy that had known too much darkness. Years passed, and Leela grew from a child into a young woman. But even as she matured, she never lost the qualities that had made her so special: her kindness, her empathy, and her unwavering belief in the goodness of others. She became a diplomat, a peacemaker, working to bring the races of the galaxy together in a spirit of cooperation and understanding. And wherever she went, she brought with her the lessons she had learned all those years ago, in the heart of a battle that had changed everything. For the warriors of the Galactic Alliance, for the former pirates of the Crimson Corsairs, and for all those whose lives she touched, Leela was a reminder that strength came in many forms. It was not always the strength of arms or the power of technology that mattered most, but the strength of the heart, the power of compassion and understanding. And as the galaxy entered a new era of peace and prosperity, as old wounds healed and new bonds were forged, they all knew that they owed a debt to the small human child who had shown them the way. For in the end, it was not the might of warships or the fury of battle that had saved the galaxy, but the love and courage of a single child. A child named Leela, whose innocence and compassion had changed the course of history, and whose legacy would endure for generations to come. As the years turned into decades, the story of Leela and the day she brought peace to the galaxy became the stuff of legend. Parents told their children of the little girl who had stepped onto a battlefield and changed the course of history with a single act of kindness. And those children grew up in a galaxy that was brighter and more hopeful than the one their parents had known, a galaxy where differences were celebrated and where cooperation was the norm. They grew up with the knowledge that a single person, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, had the power to change the world. And so, when they faced their own challenges, their own moments of darkness and doubt, they remembered the story of Leela. They remembered the strength of her compassion, the power of her innocence. And they knew that as long as there were those who were willing to stand up for what was right, as long as there were those who were willing to see the good in others, even in their enemies, then there would always be hope. For that was the true legacy of Leela, the gift she had given to the galaxy. A gift of understanding, of compassion, of love. And it was a gift that would endure, as long as there were those who were willing to embrace it. The end.